All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Megan Woolerton with Life Force Wellness. We provide corporate wellness and individual services, helping you with everything well being. We take a holistic approach focused on your physical well being, your nutrition. We also focus on your mental well being with positive psychology and stress management. And that's really where we're going to talk today is discussing, how do we handle the daily stressors? How do we beat it before it becomes burnout? What do we do if we're already facing burnout? For me personally, this has been a journey. So I didn't always start out in wellness. I actually started my career in the oil and gas field industry, working 60 to 100 hours a week, and that was grueling and anxiety driving. And I definitely experienced burnout and have gone on my journey, which is what has boosted me to build this organization and do programs like this because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. I want you to learn the kind of the lessons I learned before you absolutely need them. And in my journey, I have met Bruce Hall, and he had kind of a similar experience. And in our conversations, we both have seen overlaps in what we've learned and some key takeaways and what we'd like to share. And so, Bruce, just thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, Megan. It's an honor to be here and chatting with you and everyone who's joined us. And I'm so thankful for you for reaching out to me and encouraging me to do this webinar today and to share a little bit about my story and some of the ways that I was able to regain control, at least identify what I what my situation was, I guess. But yeah, I too was working in a very high stress, high intensity environment, manufacturing and agriculture. Um, we were growing rapidly at work. We had many, seemingly every month was a new professional achievement, and everything was going, great. So they say on the outside, but on the inside it wasn't. And about a year ago, today actually, it was last July, was when I bottomed out in my burnout journey, and the path that I've been on to recovery from then has been life changing for me. So glad to be here and share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about when you started to recognize the burnout.
Fair, fair. Um, you know, Recognition of burnout is interesting, right? Like when you're in it, when you're going down that path before you bottom out, there's many opportunities to recognize, and you do recognize it, but you tend to, at least for me, um I was pushing those recognition moments away. I was not um being accepting of the reality that I was living in. And there's aspects of that were in my control and that were not in my control. Um, what for me truly was the moment, I guess, where I chose to regain control was it was just a Friday night hanging out with our friends. We were drinking wine and laughing, and the next thing I know, I'm off on a tangent, just unloading on some people that I work with, and um, a childhood friend of mine, just patiently listened, and when I came to an end, he just said to me, Bruce, that's not who you are. And that was sort of the moment. Yeah, that was the moment for me that I realized I didn't miss so much. So,
Sorry, that's a hard realization, and I don't know how many on this call can actually relate to that, but I feel like that's something that comes up even with my coaching clients that there was a strict turning point. Maybe it was a child, coming up and, no, my dad never has any time for me. A spouse that finally just kind of hits that limit of, you're never home. you're distant, you're irritable, I feel like that friction does come up. And, if anyone on this call has ever experienced that, feel free, give that heart, give that thumbs up, let us know that, we're tracking with you. And that's really what today is about. Is it's hard when you're burned out. It doesn't just affect you personally, it affects so many people around you, and it plagues so many other areas of well-being, our mental well-being, our physical well-being, our relationships, our environment, everything suffers when we are in burnout. So thank you for sharing that story. And I know that through your journey, you kind of develop kind of these three criteria to kind of keep yourself in check, these three questions. And that's what I want everyone to kind of to learn today, because I thought this was so profound, because I kind of see the same thing in my coaching clients. I love the way that you've worded these, and it's something we can all do kind of as a self-assessment. So what was that first question?
Yeah, and I had no training in this. This was I have no one helped me. Like, I knew I had to make a change, I guess. And so the three questions that I sort of pursued really they were fun to say, right? And for me, it took that moment of my friend saying what he did, um, to for the first time in a long time be honest with my true self. I think that's a prerequisite that anyone would have to have, um, as you know ask yourself if you need change. And then the other is make it about you. Like, there are always going to be elements of your life that are out of your control, that are so-called environmental, that also contributed to one's burnout journey. Those are under your control though. So what can you do? What can you change? And so, for me, the first thing that I did was I asked myself, are you in control, Bruce? And what does that mean? It can mean so many different things, but for me, it really boiled down to am I determining my day's journey? Like, I wake up in the morning, and am I going through a path into all the places that I want to go today to experience joy and to be fulfilled and have meaning, to not be reacting, right? To lead a deliberate life. Oftentimes, I wouldn't say oftentimes. I mean, I spent nearly 9 years of my life just hanging on that edge of the cliff, and falling off, and then just sort of starting to fall off, and then catching myself, and pulling myself upright again. And that's no way to spend our time. So that's, to me, is the first point. And if you answer yes to that, um, that's an initial indicator that maybe you know something might be awry. We're always going to feel those moments in our life anyway, right? Where we're living on the edge. But if that's truly how your life is defined, then you're not in control. Um, so that's the first question that I wrestle with. And it takes months. I think that I say that it's a simple question, but it really took me months to answer that question.
Yeah. So are you in control? And that's something that comes up that I hear from my coaching clients, is like they don't feel like they have any control. They completely feel like I'm tied to do these things. And so one of the stigmas in psychology that we talk about is this external stigma of, well, I have to do these things because it's what others expect of me. And I feel like a lot of people immediately want to jump on that bandwagon of, oh, I got to get a new boss. I got to quit a job because these people are just putting too much pressure on me. And it's, I have to work on this project because that's what my boss expects of me. I have to be on the PTA for my kids because that's what other parents expect of me, or the teachers expect of me. And, we're not in control of our lives at that point. A big thing too, I hear with a lot of parents that when their kids get into sports is, well, I'm totally bound by my kid's sports schedule. Like, they have no control to do anything because I have to take the kids here, I have to take the kids there. And so they have just relinquished all control of their day to other people. And it's because of this external stigma that they don't want to let other people down. And that can lead you down that path of people pleasing, which is just like a really slippery slope for achieving burnout very quickly, is constantly trying to people please. And so I think that's a great question of, do I feel like I'm in control of my day, or am I relinquishing control to others? And so one of the tips I would give to everyone on this call is consider how you start your day. So Brendan Burchard, he's a high performance coach. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He had a great quote, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit here, but it was basically like, your email inbox is nothing more than a to-do list of what everyone else has for you to do. And so most of us wake up in the morning, and the first thing we do is we check our messages, we check our emails, we check our social media. We're seeing what everybody else wants us to do, and it's kind of like, congratulations. The first thing you did after turning off your alarm clock was relinquish control of your day to everyone else. And so if you really want to battle that burnout, it doesn't take taking major changes, and that's what I want everyone to get from this, but it's making small changes. Like, rather than checking your emails and your voice messages and your social media threads first thing in the morning, take 10-15 minutes to breathe. And what are the three things you want to do today? What are three things that are important to you that you want to make sure, I hit this bed again, that I complete today? And make those the top three priorities. Once you have those figured out, now go check your emails and see what other people want you to do. But you've got to make yourself number one priority. You got to make sure that you're not relinquishing that control and giving it to other people all the time. And especially first thing in the morning. That's how you're setting the tone for the day.
Yeah, that's Megan, that's amazing, and I think it's spot on. And one thing that I've done to help myself steer clear of some of those traps and to live a more meaningful and purposeful, controlling life over my own actions is to think about redefining the win, how I want to see a win. Like, what is the goal? We hear about that a lot, but like, how are we keeping score? That's almost more important to me now than the actual goal or what the endpoint is how am I keeping score over myself? And yeah, I keep score now with I got a smartwatch that has a little fitness tracker app, and I have no idea what the goals are in it, but it tells me every day that I'm on my way to completing my goals. And by the end of the day, I complete them, and it's like yay! And I'm just happy. It to me gives me a score that I liked, and I think that's a good way. It's a real simple way to for me anyway that I've put some of those ideas that you mentioned into practice.
Absolutely. So that was number one. Are you in control? What about number two?
Yeah, number two is a fun one for me, and probably for a lot of people, and that is, I've phrased this question in many ways. Most recently, I'm framing it up in a way that is, are the simple things in your life more complicated than they should be? I like to think about this as like a continuum of like fits and flows as an example. So, if you're feeling really good flow in your day, things are probably good. But if everything you do, whether it's like, I'm not talking about the project that you're working on at work that is like monumental. I'm talking about like you're driving the kids to school and the light changes just before you can get to the intersection and it causes you to become really angry and frustrated. Like that's an example of friction. And why is that friction there? Like someone set the light to a certain timer, and you just happen to be coming along. There was no intent, there was no negative intent behind that, but yet it sets you off as an individual. Like that's a moment where the simple things in life are becoming really hard for you to
Mm.
to deal with emotionally. Um, uh, your behavior is being your behavior is essentially impacting others. My kids are picking up on that. Um, my neighbors are seeing it, and that's now introducing friction into their lives. No cause of their own, other than just simply being in your presence. So that was a big one for me to really wrestle with, and the friction and flows in hindsight, and I look back on them, there's these little moments that I've termed as twinkle moments. I don't know why. Maybe I have two daughters and they're 7 and 4, and we talk a lot about unicorns and things like that. So maybe that's where it came from. But looking back, there were these little moments, kind of like fireflies at night, just, you know, blinking. And if you have the ability to capture these little moments, they could be truly life changing. And there are these little moments along the way, like my friend that one night who told me that, Bruce, you know, you're not, this isn't who you are. Now that I've come out of burnout and I'm on my recovery path, like I have seen these in hindsight critical moments or opportunities for me to leave burnout, right? To jump on to a different course and course correct. And I think they're probably different for everyone, but ultimately I think, you know, how would I describe a twinkle moment? It's a moment where your inner self, your true self recognizes maybe for this fleeting moment that there's a new opportunity out there where something's not quite right, or maybe I should rethink. But then they're really quickly just suppressed by that burnout, that anxiety, that stress, that need to, the need for more, the need to continue to drive harder and deeper into whatever it is you're prioritizing. And if you can, if you're on a path to burnout, you know, I hope that nobody ever bottoms out the way I did. I hope that people, you know, one of my newfound purposes in life is to try and help people not reach that moment. And I think that those twinkle moments are really important because if you can capture one of those and sit with it just for a moment and be honest with yourself, right? I think that that is a great way for people to begin that course correction before you know, you really bottom out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's raising awareness of those moments because I will say that, like, even when I started this business and it was like, okay, how am I going to help these people? I had to like think about what was I doing when I was in the thick of it. And let's be honest, I wasn't looking for a me. I wasn't looking for somebody to mentor me, to coach me, to help me, because I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to keep my head above water. I was just moving on the next task. So even if I had those twinkle moments, like you said, it got suppressed very quickly. And, you know, I see this with some of my clients that are dealing with stress, but they're really teetering on that edge of burnout. And one of the other kind of like stigmas we talk about that throws us out of balance is when our beliefs don't match our actions. And so I will coach clients and it's I'd like more work-life balance, or I'd like to find better balance. I want to spend more time with my friends. I'd like to spend more time with my family. And it's like, okay, and we'll come back to the next coaching session. It's like, okay, so this opportunity came up for you to go do that thing with your family, and instead you decided to sit at home and watch Netflix or scroll, or like you canceled plans on your friend. Like you've been complaining to me for 3 months, you'd like to spend more time with this old high school friend. And then when the opportunity came, you canceled plans at the last, like what's going on there? And I know the term like self-sabotage is getting thrown out there a lot, and whether that's what the situation is, but there's something there that's not aligning. And I don't know if it's that we're trying to force ourselves into like, oh, well, this is what it means to have good balance. I have to spend X amount of time doing this or not. But then that's that friction, right? Like my beliefs and my actions aren't in alignment with each other. And then it's causing this friction. So simple things like grabbing a cup of coffee with a friend, you know, something I know I should do for my mental health. I'm making it a bigger deal than what it is. And I'm freaking myself out. And then I'm canceling those plans, and it just keeps building. But a lot of times I don't think that people even notice it, you know, they, it's just, oh, I just canceled that plan again. Oh, well, yeah, I just, that didn't work out. The stars were in the right alignment or whatever. Like we come up with our excuses. And I think like sometimes those are the twinkle moments when we cancel those plans, when we put ourselves on the back burner, when we don't do the things that we keep saying we want to do. I think those sometimes also speak volumes as to those are the twinkle moments. Like that's the moment I should have recognized something was out of alignment in my life. You're on mute, babe.
Sorry, thank you. But that's spot on. Like they're not aha moments, right? Aha moments are different. They're the moment like the light bulb goes off and like all the answers are laid out before you. Like a twinkle moment is not that way. Like it's just a glimmer of hope that exists out there somewhere. And maybe, it's maybe if you could grab it, then you could then you can find the answer, right? The aha moments will come later for you, but you just have to change the course. You have to get out of that lane that you're in and change direction first.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I also think the other thing is that raising that awareness, I think just hearing, like looking for it. There's a lot of psychology out there on, they use like the red car. Like you don't really notice the red cars on the road until somebody talks to you about a red car. And then the next thing you know, you're driving down the road and you see all the red cars on the road. You're not going to recognize those moments if you're not thinking about them. And there's a lot of psychology about, what you think you bring into fruition, self-fulfilling prophecies. I mean, there's hundreds of self-help books, everything from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich to whatever else is on the shelf this week. And most of it can be boiled down to what you think will come into existence. So if you think about those quiet moments, those twinkle moments, those opportunities to take a step back, and kind of deconstruct the complication, make it simple again. When you look for those opportunities, when you're thinking about those opportunities, you're going to see more of them pop up. And so that's why raising awareness, I feel, is just so important for that piece is, are you overcomplicating the simple? Because if you ask me straight out, I'm going to go like, no, like it really is that complicated. Like you don't understand, and we'll give you that excuse. But then when we bring it the other way, when we think about it from another angle, you can really start to find those. So,
Absolutely. And and then so if we've asked ourselves, are we in control? And are the simple things being more complicated than they should be? Those can be subjective questions, right?
mhm,
And so it's also easy within the framework of those two questions for us to lie to ourselves, which goes back to the prerequisite of being honest. And for me, the third question was really important because it's not subjective. It's, are you doing everything? So if you believe that you're in control and that you believe that, you know, maybe the simple things are more complicated than they should be, but like, you know what, I'm doing everything and it's all great because, it's me and I'm doing it and I'm making it all happen and no one else wants to help, but, you know, darn it, this is the right thing to do. So I'm going to plow forward. I'm going to keep going. I mean, if you answer yes to that as well, you any listening person probably recognize you're really in control. Like you can't be in control. The simple things can't be more complicated than they should be, and you can't be doing everything all at the same time. Like something isn't right. Like that mathematical equation does not add up to normal, healthy psychological well-being. Um, and so once I got to that point where I asked myself if I'm doing everything, and I was like, yeah, I am. Well, why am I doing everything? That became the next thing. And it's either ultimately it's going to be either that, you know, something along the lines of where what I choose to value in life is not aligning with, maybe it's my team, my collaborators at work, my family, it could be anything. Like there's a misalignment of values there. Um, and that's probably the best case scenario if that's the case. The worst case scenario, I think, which I experienced I experienced some of both, honestly, but the worst case scenario is that your behavior is actually leading to your self-isolation, and I mean that's a true point of unhealthy living. And if someone finds themselves in uh, that place, or someone is in that place, they need help. They need your help.
absolutely. And that's something that comes up a lot with burnout is a development of a perfectionist mentality that everything has to be done perfectly. And we also kind of combine that with, well, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And so it does very frequently lead to this isolation. And I think where it gets really ugly is I see this with a lot of like couples that I will coach and even coworkers in the work environment is it leads to a lot of resentment. You know, there are people around you that are willing to help, but they might do it a little differently than how you do it. And it's letting that go, it's accepting it's progress over perfection. Certain things can be good enough. I mean, certainly if you're a brain surgeon, good enough is not going to cut it, but most of us on this call, we're nothing has to be absolutely perfect, okay? It's okay if we get it to good enough. It's okay if we are a work in progress. How can we make things just slightly better each day? And some of this is driven. So we talked about the external stigma of I have to do X because it's what others expect of me. But there's also an internal stigma that maybe it's something we had seen growing up. Maybe it's something that we've just developed over time, but we'll develop this stigma of I have to do X because if I don't feel like I do it, I'm a failure. And I see this a lot with clients, and I'll ask them like, well, why do you have to bake those cookies? Why can't you just go to the store and buy cookies from the bakery and throw them on a tray for your kids' bake sale or what? And it's, oh no, well, if I don't do it, then I feel like I'm not a good enough parent. Or if I am not volunteering, if I'm not doing this thing, if I'm not the one out in the community, then I feel like a failure. I have to be the one to do it. And we've set these impossible standards on ourselves. And I think taking a step back and going like, does that really define you? Because I think that a lot of people find their self-worth in their acts of service to others and putting these stigmas on themselves. And so we think that we can earn acceptance and love and compassion from others by doing. And that's leading us to this burnout. But really, the issue is internally. What am I placing my self-worth on? What are the beliefs that I'm holding about myself? If I'm constantly in my head saying, I'm a failure, I'm not worthy of this, I have to do this, or I'm not good enough, then those are going to plague you and lead you to that constant burnout. Because just like those impossible standards that a boss might put on you externally, you could be just as bad or even worse to yourself in a lot of cases internally.
Really.
Yeah, I think overcoming that is really key of how we self-talk to ourselves. And I'll work with a lot of my clients on reframing those negative thought patterns so that we can really define, that worth. What are we doing here? You know, what can I let go of? What is it okay to let go of without me feeling like a failure because I couldn't carry everything at once? So really overcoming those, I feel like is key. A simple exercise I give for a lot of my clients who are dealing with kind of those self-worth, I have to do everything mentality is, hey, at the end of the day, just write down 3 things that went really well for you today. Like, what were your 3 big wins for the day? Maybe it was a home cooked meal. Maybe it was that you hit the gym. Maybe it's that you got that project done. But like, what were your 3 wins for the day? And give yourself credit for them. Because I think for a lot of people, especially in burnout, we are so busy doing so many things. We're trying to maintain control of everything. Simple things are becoming complicated. And now we're trying to do everything all ourselves, that we are so busy jumping from task to task to task that we don't take the moment to step back and go, what did I actually accomplish today? A lot of us will go to bed and go, we accomplished a lot, but there's still so much to do. And we're ruminating on all the tasks that need to happen. And I think taking that pause and giving yourself just a little bit of praise and a little bit of credit for, hey, I accomplished these 3 things is huge for that mindset and that mental shift.
Yeah, how tricky is it for us to like recognize that the way to regain control is essentially to relinquish it? And there's a certain, at least for me, there was a certain ironic aspect to that was difficult for me to, truly and honestly begin to practice. And there's a great podcast out there called The Happiness Lab, and with Dr. Laurie Santos, who I'm an avid fan of her work. And there's an episode called The Power of Subtraction. And for me, it resonates very strongly with what you were just saying. It's oftentimes we think about, okay, this isn't working. What can we add to the equation to make it work better? Well, sometimes it's simply not adding something we have to do. We just need to take something away. And I think they use the example of teaching your kid to ride a bike, and the individual who invented the Strider bike, the most wildly successful bicycle of the past decade. And all the individual did was take the pedals off from it. And kids are like learning to balance and ride a bike overnight, seemingly. Right? There's such elegant beauty in that. If you just take something away and it can work so much better.
So we've had a couple things come up in the chat. So before we move on to the end of this, um, one, someone mentioned they also dealt with ulcers. So for me personally, I have Crohn's disease. And so I was in this burnout at like just being diagnosed with Crohn's, and that stress and that burnout absolutely can plague the body. So if you're dealing with especially digestive issues, joint issues, building up that inflammation in the body from all the stress and the burnout, it just compounds it. I mean, because when you don't feel good, you can't produce. Like you're so much less productive. And it's like at a moment when you want to be on your A game and you just cannot perform because you feel so rotten. Yeah, I totally get that. In fact, on the 23rd, we're hosting a more formal educational webinar, Flare Up or Calm Down, and it's mastering inflammation with food. So if you are somebody that's dealing with some of those digestive issues or inflammation buildup because it could be stress related, what are just some foods that you can eliminate from your diet? What are some foods you can add to your diet so that you can reduce that inflammation in the body so you can feel a little bit better and produce? But another comment just came in, and Bruce, I'd love to share this with you, that they said they could completely relate to you, especially in their career too, and especially when you're a manager. And I know this is something you and I have talked about in the past, that you were managing a team, and I think a lot of people think that when they're facing burnout, they have to make these big, massive changes. And for some people, that is absolutely the case. Sometimes you have to step away from an environment to get better. That's what I had to do. But that's not always the case. And I feel like when you are in a management position, I think like you were, there are some of these changes that you can make because, and I'll let you share the story, but I loved how you put it in that, okay, I could either blame the environment, or as a manager, I could do something to correct this environment. Like as a manager, it gives you some more opportunity, not just to make it better for yourself, but also for those that you're responsible for. And I'll let you talk to that a little bit and share.
Yeah, sure. And I think for me, this was the right decision. I think for every individual, it's going to change on how, if you identify like, yeah, I'm burned out, this is bad, I need to get out, then get out, do it. For me, I chose not to do that. I chose to remain in my place of employment. And primarily because, yeah, I did have a large team, and I wasn't ready to leave them. They were very high achieving, they were up and comers, they were just incredibly talented people, both internally and then externally. I was working with many external partners to our company. My position, I was 2 seats away from the president of the company. So I was doing a lot of board materials. I was doing a lot of strategic sessions with our senior management team. At the same time, I had a large day-to-day role across many cross-functional units throughout our organization and beyond our organization. Um, and so I didn't want to let all of those people down along the way either, but I knew that I had to change something. I also knew that things weren't rosy in my environment. And going back to sort of the prerequisites for me with the 3 questions, what I chose to do was to stay at my employer, um, and working with things that, you know, were about me. I made it about myself. I didn't make it about the environment. I chose to identify honestly what were the things that I was doing, what were the behaviors that I had that were leading to my own burnout and negative situations at work. Um, and I'll tell you, by doing that, the amount of clarity that I was able to gain over the entire past 9 years of my life was amazing, right? Because the environment didn't change, right? So I was able to now identify like, wait, what are the things I'm doing that's contributing to this environment in a negative way. Correct those, okay, cool. Like I feel good. I feel comfortable with the progress I've made. Am I perfect? No, but um, I know that these elements of the environment are now removed, these negative aspects. I've changed that. But what that allows to do is for me to have the clarity on, okay, yeah, this aspect of the environment was wrong, and it wasn't because of me. Like that's the culture, or that's the system, or that's the structure, or it could be anything, right? But it allows me to self-isolate my own problems, my own challenges, um, to define who I am and who I want to be and what changes I want to make and what my future direction is, uh, rather than just blowing it up, sorry, just blowing it all up and then moving on. And I don't know, maybe if I moved on to a new employer, I've been bringing certain baggage with me that would have been negative in a new environment, right? So it was really an enlightening journey, a powerful experience for me to remain with my employer throughout these, early to maybe mid-stage burnout recovery stages.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we got asked too, like, well, one note here is that, you need to be trained. And this is something I preach on. And this is a topic for another day, is there's not enough leadership training and development going on. We have a lot of people taking up management roles that have never had any kind of real formal management training, and how to like lead with empathy is something that I know is trending now, and I'm glad to see it. But there definitely needs to be a bigger push. But what are some examples of things that maybe you did with your teams to help change that organizational culture so that we weren't causing the burnout?
Mm, yeah, I had to, if we think back to some of the questions that I asked myself previously, am I in control? Are things harder than they should be? Am I doing everything? It sort of started there, right? Like when I was truthful with myself, then I could look to my team and then begin to ask for support. Like that's essentially wasn't happening before, right? When I'm doing everything myself and I'm making it all happen, then whether it's my own team, my own direct reports, or whether it's another department, or whether it's talking to HR or my boss or the president of the company, I was not asking for help. I wasn't, which is ironic because I was involved in strategy. I was setting strategy for the entire organization. So my whole job required me to have the best vision and insights across the organization to say, we need help and supports in all of these places. But I could not for the life of me turn the mirror on myself and say, look, what do you need? What help do you need? What support do you need, Bruce? And I think that inability to do that, right, is what really snowballs and spirals down. And so now, yeah, we had a fantastic strategy session last last fall with our team, and um the growth of each one of those individuals, they're already like such like high performing individuals that times they have to like put the reins on them a little bit. Like I can't move that fast, but the growth that they've experienced and that they've shown and the sense of ownership, um, so much satisfaction for me in seeing where they are today versus where they were a year ago with, me as their leader being, I mean, yeah, just hanging on, I was hanging on for dear life. And so it wasn't deliberate. It wasn't being present for them. Um, and I went from, maybe having, I don't know, like a 30-minute conversation with each of them once a week to like, I'd walk into my office, and I'd say, check in with each one of them every single morning, and sit down in their chair in their office and ask them, how are you doing? How did it go yesterday? What do you need today? And, I put office hours up basically. I forget what I called them. They were like support hours maybe or something like that. But the inspiration came from um, a friend of mine who is a faculty member at university, and uh, They have office hours where they're just the door's open and anyone can come in at any moment in time and just they have permission to interrupt you. Um, that made it like I accepted the interruptions in those moments. It was such a game changer for me rather than having, I'm scurrying away on my computer trying to do 14 different things and my head's on the verge of explosion. And by the way, it's like 10 a.m. We still have like 5 or 6 more hours to go through this. And one of them comes in with like the most simple question, right? And who knows how I greeted that question in that moment. I certainly would not have recognized it. But by by giving my time to them, it allowed for me to be more rooted in identifying the supports that are truly needed, not only for myself, but for my team. Changing that culture away from a reactionary culture to a much more deliberate, thoughtful planning culture, which again, I was overseeing strategy, right? So we shouldn't be forward and we shouldn't be reacting who we were. That's where we were. So felt it felt really rewarding to me when we were able to as a team begin to have that become our new normal, our new culture. Uh, then of course that's it within my control at work. Then you have to look beyond if you're in a place where a position where you work that you're collaborating with other functional units, how does your new culture now match with their culture? How are you now working? Like, so it's like starting over. Um, and that's where staying at an organization like I did really, yeah, like when I say that I could see like I could dissect what were the elements that I brought to the table and what were the structural or procedural elements or just the culture of the broad organization that are not going to be as easily adaptable, I guess, as you as one individual can be, who makes, I make a difference for, myself and the people I directly put to work on a daily basis. And it was just so enlightening. It was a very enlightening experience.
Yeah. And that's something that I found I started doing with my teams is I would just come in, we had our war room, and that's where all my coordinators were, and I'd come in and I'd be like, "Guys, I got a call at 3 a.m. because a toilet in someone's unit on a drill site didn't flush. I am exhausted and I am not in a good mood. So if you need me, I'm going to be over there. If you have a request, send it to me in email because if you shout it at me right now, I'm probably not going to remember because I'm sleep deprived. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just really grumpy today because I didn't sleep well, but I'm here if you need me." And it like set the tone for my team because they know, like, okay, today's not the day to ask Megan for a raise, right? Today's, not the day to bring up this situation. That can wait till tomorrow. They knew how to properly communicate with me. And I think that also helps manage the stress, especially like that second question you mentioned about the simple things becoming complicated. When we are really stressed out, everything seems complicated and it can lead to that kind of explosion of emotion and just having the wherewithal to like be able to openly communicate with your teams. And even if you're not a leader, even if you're not the manager, to go to your coworkers and be like, "Hey guys, not my best day today. I'm really sorry if I seem out of it. It's not you personally. I've got just something else going on in my life." Now everyone else knows how to manage expectations with you. What I thought was great though was after like a couple weeks of me basically doing this, where I would like, "Okay, here's how I am today. Here's where you can find me." My team started doing it with me. And they would come to me and be like, "Megan, I'm having a terrible day. I've got this much work on my plate." And it was like, "Okay, hey, Brittany, how are you today? Oh, you're doing good. Great. Can you help Allison out? Like, she's got 10 work orders on her desk. She can handle maybe six today. Can you pick up her other four?" Yes. And then there'd be a day where Brittany would need help and Allison would be there and sharing the workload. And I think that's something huge in corporate cultures that's I'm starting to see some momentum with is understanding the workloads. And there are going to be days where we can tackle it and we can be productive and we can handle more. And there's going to be days where something goes on in our personal life. We don't sleep well, we're not feeling well, and we can't. And having that open communication and that open dialogue of today I can really hit it, today I can't really hit it, and creating a culture of what I say it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be human. It's okay to have bad days. But I do think that that has to start from leadership because we follow the leaders. And if the leaders aren't willing to admit when they have bad days, if the leaders aren't willing to say, hey, not my best day today, if I seem grouchy or if I snap, it's nothing with you. I apologize, not my best day today. Then why would you expect the employees to feel comfortable to speak up? Because we're following your lead. And so that's why I think if you are in a leadership position, this is a great opportunity to really shift that culture. But even as a coworker, like I was a mid-level manager, but it actually became a thing across a couple different departments where people would come in and be like, we give a percentage. I'm 80% today, I'm 50% today. And we kind of knew like where everyone was at. Who can we throw more work at? Who needs a break today? Like, who are we going to nag about this thing? It just helps. But you can do that at any level of the organization, but leadership really needs to be on board for that to be a cultural thing. And that's where part of what I do for my business really comes into play. But as a coworker, I will tell you when I was in the thick of it working those 60 to 100-hour work weeks, um, it was one of those things that I was so thankful to have coworkers that were almost like family to me that could come by my side, that I did have that open dialogue with, that I could trust, that, would wait up for me at 2 a.m. while I was finishing something up at the office still. They were there. And just being able to be that support for somebody, and I'm not saying you have to stay till 2 a.m., but being a support for somebody, just now letting them know you're there for them can make a huge impact. Maybe not on a broad corporate culture level, but at least for that department. And it does spread. I do think it grows. I do think as more people see it, then it does spread. It is contagious.
Absolutely.
So I am going through the chat. I'm going to keep going through the chat. Um, If anyone has any questions, you can put those into the chat now. While I do that, hey, Bruce, any parting words of wisdom? What's like one key takeaway? What's one thing outside those three questions, like what's one thing you wish you knew when you were in the thick of it? Like what's something that would have made the biggest impact for you?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to pick one thing, right? There's so many things that impact our lives, but and that make a difference. But to me, it's about keeping it simple. And um, it's not that we have to, at least I don't believe, and how I'm choosing to live my life is I don't have to overnight change everything and be perfect in some new way, right? It's about practice. I think you've used that word multiple times today. It's a practice. We're just practicing. And if I'm practicing in a way that I'm defining the wins, I'm defining what the score, how we keep score, that's all that matters to me, right? I know, and what are the wins for me? They're my core beliefs. They're who I am as a person. They're not they're not the things in that um, work plan or uh, the profit goals. Those are all good, right? But those are things that, whether it's be at work or in my personal life, that help me feel fulfilled and have meaning. And those are things that, for me, that's how I choose to keep score now, right? It's the simple things. So what's the three things that I enjoyed about today? Um, what things, about my day are going to lead to a sense of meaning and purpose? And when I think about keeping score and wins in that context, almost anything can fit in, right? Whether it's that, whether we want to drive our total revenues by 10% at work, or whether it's, man, I really want to take the kids out for ice cream tonight. Like both of those things give me a sense of fulfillment, meaning, and joy. But I'm focused on fulfillment, meaningful experiences, and joy. I'm not laser focused on the 10% revenue increase. So I'm not laser focused on um, the ice cream for the kids. I'm focused on just being happy, and is what I'm, you know, what I. It's easier to say no when you're I think when you have that approach too, I couldn't say no to anything. I was always a yes man. Yes, 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 let's do it. And this is wonderful. There's so many wonderful things out there. Opportunities abound for all of us, and they're all such good opportunities. But let's just keep it simple. And how can I make a simple change to my life that um, helps me feel better at the end of the day? And you mentioned, fitness and diet being some examples. And I'm, I used to play sports. I played sports in college. Um, I haven't done physical activity in like 20 years. And now in the morning for like 3 minutes. I'm like fishing the line with food, but it feels so damn good. I'm the worst yoga person you'd ever see in your life. I'm a huge man, by the way, for those of you who can't see me. I'm like I'm mostly like a Sasquatch. And I'm trying, and I don't bend at all. And so I'm like trying new yoga poses. And I think for anyone watching it, they're probably like, what is that guy doing? Fortunately, no one's watching. It's 5 o'clock and it's in my basement, and I'm the only one there, and I love it. And it makes me feel happy. So we don't have to be good at it or perfect at it. We just have to be happy doing it.
Absolutely. I think that's like my thing is one of the other stigmas, we talk internal, external beliefs not aligning, but one of the other ones is not having clear direction. What is your definition for success? Like, please tell me. Like when you say, "Oh, I want to be successful. I want to be happy." Well, define that. What does it mean to be successful? Where are those goalposts? How do you know you've accomplished it? Like we even talk about this with like balance, life balance. What does balance look like for you? It's different for everyone. An entrepreneur who loves her job, I probably work a lot more than a lot of my friends, but I don't feel out of balance because it's something that's energizing me. It's not draining me. It's a mindset. It's a how you feel, and that's going to look different for everyone, but each one of us has to define what is that. And I love there's a comment in here that whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And I think that's huge because when you're spinning your wheels and you're just saying yes and you're people pleasing, are you working towards your goal? If you don't clearly define your goal, then you don't know how to make the right decisions to get you where you want to go. And so reminding yourself, like, this is my goal. And then when I'm deciding, am I going to say yes or no to this thing? I can ask, is this moving me closer to my goal? Or is it hindering my progress? So really clearly defining goals. And even if that's just for your day, just, for today, like what are my three, like I said at the very beginning, set those three goals for your day. What are my three things I want to accomplish today? And then this thing I'm about to take on, is it moving me closer to that or taking me away from that? I think that's really big. One of the questions we got is, what's next for you, Bruce? What are all the parts of your day? Do you feel like the culture? Another question we got was, do you feel like the culture at your company did change for the positive? And really, what's next for you?
I feel like we need another hour.
Well, we got 5 minutes, so
Yeah,
keep it
I
quick.
mean, what's next for me? I don't know. I did recently make the decision to, very recently, actually, last week, to step down and resign from the organization I was working for, which is an amazing company. Um, I did that I chose to work on and focus my time on family. We're dealing with some medical situations that um, in the past I would not have been present for. I mean, I was physically there, but you know, I wasn't providing support, let's be honest. And I'm just not going to do that again. I've really been thinking about and recently, and I wish I could remember who it was that I was listening to who shared this idea of convenience and experiences. And they put like a monetary valuation on the definitions, where convenience is time well saved. And then our experience is time well spent. And that really resonated for me. And so I'm really thinking about that. Like, where do I want to save my time and where do I want to spend my time? Um, so what is next for me? I mean, directly before me is my family, and I'm going to, be the son, the grandson, the father, the brother, the husband that, I really should have been for the past 9 years, but it wasn't. Um, and then while I'm doing that, I'm really preparing for, like you know, what are the environment. What are the environments that I want to be a part of, right? How do I want to think about and define myself, and what do my daily wins look like beyond my family? Um, and whether that be within my friends network or my professional network, or at my place of employment. So I'm really excited and fortunate to have met many amazing individuals throughout multiple chapters in my life. So I see some individuals on the call today who I've collaborated really closely with. That means a lot to hear, so thank you, Fina. Um, I multiple options. However,
Right. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming today. Bruce, thank you so much. Bruce and I met honestly just online on LinkedIn. We were both posting about burnout stuff, and I'm like, hey, let's connect. And we had a great conversation. There was so much we had in common. So don't underestimate those connections that you can make out there, finding that tribe of similar interests. If there's anyone that wants more information, wants to connect, you think of a question later, I did share our email into the chat, Life Force Wellness email. We can put you into connection, either myself or Bruce. Again, as a reminder, on Tuesday, the 23rd, we're doing an educational webinar on flare up or calm down, mastering inflammation with diet or through diet. That's about an hour webinar with science-based. We're offering it for free to anyone who's in our Life Force Wellness Elite membership group. That elite group gets coaching and webinars every month, as well as access to our Life Force Wellness app. If that's something that might interest you, certainly shoot us an email, and the link for that next webinar is in there. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We hope this was good. We'll share out the recording with you. It will be posted on our YouTube page. And Bruce, just thank you again. I appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and be here and share your words of wisdom.